This month, we will consider together in our services and our soul matter groups what it means to be a people of grace. In some theologies, grace is thought of as unmerited reward, as blessings bestowed upon us by a divine force without cause. As I look at the inequities of the world and our lives in it, I have long questioned the notion that a divine force would intentionally send unmerited blessings our way while withholding similar benefits from others. And yet, I feel like I do know grace. I can see how blessings abound even in the midst of our most pain-filled realities. I can see how our lives may go in unexpected, unappealing directions, painful directions, sometimes as a result of things we have chosen, but also at times through no direct fault of our own, and that even when everything seems to be crumbling around us, we may still discover amidst the rubble of what once was the building blocks of what can yet still be. This grace that I know I have heard described as the ability to redefine the boundaries of possibility. Grace is the ability to redefine the boundaries of possibility. I may not be convinced that there is a divine force outside of us orchestrating these realities and possibilities. But for me, anyway, whether or not there is a source is beside the point. For in my experience of this life we share, grace indeed abounds. It is a grace that is accessible to all. It is a grace that we bring about by our choice to participate in it. This morning I'm going to share with you a few stories of grace as I have come to understand it. The grace of these stories may be different from the grace of your religious past or present, but it is a powerful grace all the same. It is the grace that we help bring about by the choices that we make, by the difficulties we overcome, by the possibilities we create through the way we live our lives, by our willingness to turn our heads and begin to see yet again with gratitude how this can be the best part of our lives, even despite all the reasons we may have convinced ourselves this is not the case, even then. Many years ago, a friend of mine visited with me to talk through some challenges he was facing. He had taken a job in Iowa, which required that he be separated from his wife and teenaged sons in another state. The plan was that the family would eventually join him here. But several months later, it was clear that not only would they not be moving to Iowa, but that the separation was moving from temporary to permanent. My friend was heartbroken. This was not the narrative he thought they were living. It was as if he had been cut loose from everything he knew, now living in an unfamiliar place, unsure of what the future might hold. We visited occasionally for the next year or so as he pieced together a different narrative, not one that would replace what had come before, but one that he would build anew from the way things now were, rather than from how he once thought they should be. He maintained his relationship with his children from afar, taking regular trips to see them, even as they were at the age when hanging out with parents was not a top priority. And he started to date, taking the risk to put himself out there again, despite all the uncertainty, despite the chance for more heartbreak. Eventually, he became engaged to a wonderful woman who had also overcome her own failed marriage, her own narrative of heartbreak and disappointment. The day of their wedding, I thought of the journey they had shared with me. I thought of their bleak moments, the times when acceptance was not easy to come by. I thought of how much brokenness had brought them to this beautiful day. At the beginning of the ceremony, the couple asked that we all listen to a song called "Bless the Broken Road." It had these lyrics: that every long-lost dream led me to where you are. Others who broke my heart were like northern stars, pointing me on my way into your loving arms. This much I know is true, that God blessed the broken road that led me straight to you. I've thought about that moment a lot over the years, standing there with that couple, with their children, how we all listened to that song on their wedding day, how much tender joy that gathering held, and disappointment too. How we were all reminded of the rewards that can come when we can bring ourselves to live as though life is trustworthy, even when evidence would suggest it is not. It was a moment of grace created by countless other moments of grace, moments in which the boundaries of possibility had been redefined by the courageous choices of these people who had been betrayed by life, but who had chosen to re-engage with it nonetheless. From where did this impulse come for this couple to redefine their possibilities despite all that had been lost? It may have come from a yearning for relief from the pain of being stuck in the past. It may have come from their faith, from their wrestling with the meaning of life enough to determine that what they most wanted could only be discovered through their willingness to accept what was, so that they could embrace what yet could be. Some would say it was divine intervention, and some would say it was just luck and good timing that brought these two together. But no matter the source, the impulse they shared to redefine the boundaries of possibility was a kind of grace, I think, a participatory grace that would not have come about were it not for their willingness to risk giving themselves to it. Over the years, I've had many opportunities to learn from those who have remade their lives after heartbreak, discovering within themselves the courage to start over even when it seems most unlikely. My friends have had to rebuild their lives after the death of a spouse or a partner or a child or a dream of who they thought they would be. And to journey with them in the small ways I have has been a privilege. I think of it as wise person training. They were training me how to be wise. They have told me of the grief they have had to endure as they have let go of the past so that they could fully be in the present. Another of the privileges I have encountered in this ministry has been learning from people as they have faced significant health challenges and terminal illness. For many, as they have shared with me the new perspectives they have gained in their recognition that this life is not ours to keep, a clarity of what matters most has emerged, of how lovely and precious each moment can be, of how the little things we can so easily take for granted are really the big things, the things that matter most. I've seen a peacefulness come over many of my friends in these times, how they have blessed those in their presence with their loving forgiveness and acceptance. And I have seen their loved ones let go of long-held grievances, long enough, at least, to participate in the grace of sweet endings too. These have been holy moments to witness, moments rooted in compassion for what could yet be, despite all that would soon end. These have been moments of grace. Earlier this month, I had a less dramatic reminder of the power of participatory grace, but no less important. Some of my extended family had gathered in Iowa City for our annual pre-Halloween get-together. As has been the custom for many years, we were staying at a local hotel with a swimming pool for the kids before we would head over to my brother-in-law's house for a meal. As our youngest daughter, Claire, is only 2, I had to be with her every moment she was in the pool, which was every moment we were anywhere near the pool. My family, all their kids are older than that, so they're just sitting on the side talking, having a drink. Mark heads straight for the pool. One of the gifts of having 8 years between our 2 daughters is that I not only remember the value of spending similar time with Claire's sister Leah when she was Claire's age, but also how the tedium of playing the same water games over and over will not last forever and will one day be missed. And so Claire and I were in the pool for much of the morning, except for the dozens of times we emerged to climb a flight of stairs hand in hand so we could ride a water slide back down into the pool. Eventually we moved on to some other games, blowing bubbles, swinging her through the water, having her jump off the side of the pool into my arms. At one point, I remembered the game I had played with Leah of holding her under her armpits, counting 1, 2, 3, and throwing her into the air, letting her splash back down, careful to catch her before she fully submerged in the water. Claire was, of course, immediately delighted by this game and kept demanding that I repeat it. 2 fee, she kept pleading, 2 fee. After several throws, I was getting tired. My usual response in moments like this is to just stop and try to distract Claire by doing something else. Redirection, But I was inspired by a suggested exercise in this month's Soul Matters packet that invited participants to bring grace to another's life. And so I decided to keep going until she wanted to stop. As I made that conscious decision, I had to recognize that I'm always the one that stops. It's never her that stops. So I was going to turn the tables this time and see what happened. And so we continued the game beyond what either of us had expected. 2 fee, she kept shouting and laughing. My arms were getting to be like noodles, but I kept going. And the look of delight on her face as I continued the game beyond her expectations was more than worth my extra effort. As I laughed and I celebrated this fun we were having, I thought back to a similar time I had shared with Leah many years ago, how an older woman watching us from the side of the pool had said, "You'll never regret spending this time." And I was reminded how right she had been. It wasn't too much longer that we'd played 1, 2, 3 that morning, but the extra time we had spent was precious to us both. Claire and I had shared some participatory grace, and we would both be better for it, tired arms and all. One more story, this one from earlier this week. It's a story of my relationship with my dad. It had been a long time since the two of us had talked, too long for a father and a son. I could argue that it was up to him to call me, and that's what I had been doing, at least in my mind, for months. Busy as my life is, or as I tell myself it is, I'd had little time or reason to doubt my refusal to call. When I would think about him, I would quickly and confidently assure myself that I was right, or was it righteous, in my stubborn stance. My dad and I weren't in the midst of a disagreement, at least not one that we had named to each other. Several states away, he may have been nurturing his own narrative of neglect, committed to his own expectation that I should be keeping in touch with him. The last time we had visited, upon hearing his commentary about how long it had been since we talked, I'd said, "You know, Dad, you could call me sometime if you want to chat." He had responded, yes, I know. But now, these many months later, he had not called, and neither had I. Maybe he was waiting for a call from me, despite my feeble suggestion that it was his turn. Maybe not. How would I know? Either way, committed as I was to my own inaction, to my conviction that this time the call was his to make, to my hope that he might eventually get my unspoken message that I was attempting to send him by not calling. In the midst of standoffs like these, particularly those in which the expectations are not even being named, there's not much room for understanding. There's not much room for change. There's not much room for grace. Well, I'd had a tough week, a week in which I had disappointed some people I care about, a week in which I was feeling disconnected, a week in which I needed to be reminded who I am rather than who I was not being. Have you had weeks like that? So, much to my surprise, I decided to call my dad. It's funny to me how easy it was for me to pick up the phone and dial his number, considering how devoted I had been to not calling. It's not a big deal, after all, to push a few buttons, have a conversation. It's not a big deal, even if I had made it one. Rare have been the times over the past decade or so when I have called my dad and he hasn't been there. In fact, I can't remember the last time he didn't pick up the phone by the third ring. But this night, after several rings, the answering machine picked up. I left a message telling him I was thinking about him, hoped that we would catch up soon. Well, the next night I was carving pumpkins with Leah. We had just worked together to remove the innards, scooping with our hands that cold orange flesh, the slippery seeds, when my dad called. For the next 30 minutes or so, while I worked my knife around the pencil-drawn shapes on Leah's pumpkin, my dad and I caught up. Our conversation focused mostly on his latest ailments and challenges. I did a lot of listening. I offered sympathy. I asked follow-up questions. This call was not unlike most calls we've shared in recent years. And yet, there was something special about our conversation. Perhaps it was my relief at ending the stalemate. Or maybe it was that the call took place amidst the ritual of pumpkin carving, the sense memories of which always remind me of my dad, the parent who, many years ago, had carefully cut the top of the pumpkin for me, who had carved my pencil-drawn designs out with a utility knife. And now, as I did the same for my daughter, I was again spending time with him, at least on the phone. With the poignantly transient nature of this life we share present in the conversation and in the carving. Even before I had hung up the phone that night, I had to admit to myself that the grace our relationship had most needed turned out to be my willingness to set aside my stubborn expectations. to remind myself that the little things are, in fact, the big things, to embrace my ability to, with the most compassion and forgiveness I could muster, redefine the boundaries of the possible while there's still time. Do you have a relationship like this in your life right now? Are you holding steady to your side of a communication standoff? Holding steady, holding steady. Are you clinging to your expectations of what someone else should be doing, whether you have fully communicated those expectations to them or not? Are you resigning yourself to inaction in the hope of inspiring new behavior? Are you waiting for the perfect moment when those who are disappointing you will suddenly see the light and change? Are you, like I was, waiting for the grace that will not likely come without your participation? If so, won't you pause with me now in a moment of reflection or prayer? Life of our shared life, have mercy on us, we weary travelers, as we make our clumsy way between our birth and our death, amidst all our connections and separations. Forgive us for seeking to instruct others through our passive behavior and unspoken expectations. Teach us to see, even in our disappointments, the possibilities yet to be discovered. Show us the folly of withholding the love that is ours to give before it's too late. Encourage us to participate in the grace that is ours to bestow and to receive. And may we and all those we love and those we struggle to love receive the blessings of that grace. Amen. I have to ask before we stop, what grace are you waiting for right now? What choices are you waiting to make that could bring it to being? Why are you waiting? Why? It could happen anytime. Tornado, earthquake, Armageddon. It could happen. Or sunshine, love, salvation. It could, you know. That's why we wake and look out. No guarantees in this life, but some bonuses, like morning, like noon, like evening, like right now. Like right now.